is Aline White Swan. Welcome to the Mysterious Domain Movie Palace. Well, I'm having quite a surprise because there are almost 2,000 of you out there now subscribing to watch these movies from my collection. And thank you so much. This is totally unexpected. We also have Halloween coming up, so I'm going to upload something that's been requested by quite a few people. So hopefully you'll come around for that one. I'm not going to reveal it here, but you'll know when you see it. And I think some of you will be really happy that I put this one up here. What this video is about is, like I said, to thank you for 2,000 subscribers, almost. At this moment, I'm at 1,945. And this has happened in a matter of days. A lot of people. And Black Sunday seems to be the biggest draw. And you know what's interesting about Black Sunday? YouTube sent me a notice and said, we're age restricting this film. And I mean, I'd already done that. I already set it for 18 and older. But I guess YouTube is doubling down on it. I don't know if someone said something, they saw their kid watching it or something, but it's already been age restricted. So, I mean, I wouldn't... 18's a little old, but were I 10 years old or 11 years old and I saw the opening scene to Black Sunday, I would have probably been traumatized, to say the least. Little secret about me, I did not become interested in horror films until I was in my 40s. And I was living in England. For some reason, living in England exposed me to a side of myself, you might call it Jungian shadow work, that I had never explored before, except within, say, Grimm's fairy tales, which were pretty dark. But I grew up devouring I love Grimm's fairy tales. Then when I was in England, I found a book of short stories by Tanith Lee, and I'd never read Tanith Lee before. I'd had Angela Carter hanging around since the 80s, but I had never read Tanith Lee before, and it was a book of fairy tales that she had rewritten. And somehow things came together and I started watching these horror movies. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, there would be like a Halloween party or something, and some people would have like, I'll never forget when there was Rosemary's Baby at somebody's house. It was the first time I'd ever seen it. I think it was on TV because this had to be in the 70s before we had home video and all of that. So they must have been airing it on television during Halloween. And I was raised very much Catholic, and it scared me to death. I thought Rosemary's Baby was the scariest thing I'd ever seen. So it shows you. And I think I must have seen The Exorcist, which I still get very disturbed by. And then, Pumpkinhead. I saw Pumpkinhead at a Halloween party once, and it was like, you know, because I was rural as well. I grew up in farm country. So this Pumpkinhead thing kind of was like really woo-woo for me. And I don't remember it being particularly scary, but disturbing, I guess would be the word. So anyway, that's enough of that blather. So thank you. So what I wanted to talk about, if I haven't talked too much already, is I used to write fiction under the name Aline de Winter. And I've published 5 novels and a bunch of short stories. All my short stories were published in different various publications. And then the novels I self-published and put them on Amazon. And I had one in particular called The Lady in Yellow that sold like hotcakes for like 3 years. That book always never ceased to amaze me how many of those books I would sell. And then it ended up getting buried under a bunch of very dishonest, bad reviews. Obviously by some people who never read the book. Or maybe they were drunk when they read it. I don't know, but it wasn't the book. And then I believe British people going in and saying my grammar and my spelling was wrong and all over the book, and without acknowledging the fact that I'm American and we don't have the same rules. So you can't I'm not going to go to a British author like, say, Tanith Lee and say her spelling and her grammar is wrong all through this book. I'm not going to do that. But after a while, I just stopped reading them, and the book just get buried. And I really, sometimes I have a suspicion that these are trolls and that they saw how successful my book was being, and they decided to come in. Maybe they've got books out and they want to compete with it, or they didn't like seeing that book be successful, and so it ruins your sales when your stars are down to 3, right? I mean, it really can hurt your sales. But I made a lot of sales of that book for about 3 years. But what I was thinking, if you guys are looking for a Halloween read, this book is called The Shadows. See it? And this book was a result of a friend of mine that I knew in England. She's like a millennial. She's much younger than me, but we got very close. She was talking to me about her boarding school that she went to, which was out in the countryside. She comes from a very wealthy family in London, but she was sent to this boarding school out in the countryside. I think we were talking about the Blair Witch Project and how I was saying I wasn't scared of that film at all because I grew up in the woods, and so the woods aren't scary to me. And she said she was terrified of the woods. And then she started talking about her boarding school, and then she started talking about how she felt that it had really spooky atmosphere, and she was having problems with her nerves, and there was all this spooky stuff, and it was a very posh boarding school. In fact, Carey Mulligan, the actress, went there, and she started talking about it, and I got really intrigued. I said, so let's keep talking about this school. This sounds really interesting. And she talked there about these tuck boxes where they would have their snacks all in there. And then she talked about the tennis bubble. I mean, things like this are so British. Americans would never call their tennis court the tennis bubble. And then, and it was near the woods, and she was scared of the woods. And also that there were these older girls, like when she was a freshman, or what we would call a freshman in there, they would be assigned a senior girl, and these girls were meant to follow them around and mentor them and help them, and they were called their shadows. And I thought, that is food for a horror story. That is creepy, isn't it? I mean, really. And that was a real thing that they did. And so I had seen Suspiria. So I had in my head this idea of this British boarding school, and I had Suspiria in my head, and I had Nancy Drew in my head. This is a kind of a YA. It was aimed at the YA readers, but it doesn't matter. But the protagonist, Poppy Farrell, is a bit of a Nancy Drew sleuth kind of character. And I kind of mashed it all together and came up with this book called The Shadows. And you'll see a little bit of Suspiria, the idea, the behind it. You'll see a little bit of that in there. You'll see a little bit of Nancy Drew. You'll see a little bit of things that are completely my own stuff. My own experience of living in England, actually. A lot of that went in here too. So I was thinking, if you need a Halloween read, you might like to read The Shadows. When I put this out, you won't see a lot of reviews and you won't see a lot of sales. And the reason is because when I published it, things in my personal life were going really weird and intense, and I didn't put any marketing behind it, so I did not promote it. And at that point too, I was getting really nervous of reviews because I thought, wow, people can just attack your book and be completely wrong and inaccurate about what they're saying, and at the same time it just tanks your book. So I don't really like the economy of reviews. I'll put the link to my Amazon page below if you want to check it out. I've got other ones too. I may show those at different times. They're all spooky. So The Lady in Yellow has got werewolves in it. The Vampire's Mirror. That's my personal. I have a personal favorite towards that book for some reason. This is novella. It's really short. A book called Roses of the Moon, which is placed in 14th century Hungary during the Ottoman Wars and is based on, was inspired by Countess Bathory. Dunusgar, I believe, is the title I settled on. Takes place in 12th century Scotland. So I've read a lot of history and studied. And it's a bit, that one's a bit Game of Thrones-ish. But I actually stopped writing novels because I started painting, and I can't do them both. And the thing is, I think having this kind of stuff in my head all the time, when I was living in my head way too much, and then also it was dark, and I just felt it was affecting my outlook on life a little too much. So I done these 5 novels, and all those short stories is fine with me. So yeah, sorry I blathered on too much, but if you want a fun read for Halloween season, try The Shadows. Either way, you have a great evening or morning or wherever you are. Thank you so much for subscribing and being one of my tribe over here in the obscure Gothic films. And take care. Bye-bye.